eyes.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Service Box. My name is Tim Baghurst, joined, as always, by LPRT Commissioner TJ Bamba. TJ and I have special guests this evening from Canada, Jen Saunders, Frederique Lambert. Thank you both so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you both, and I'm looking forward to some discussion this evening. But before we begin, maybe if you could just tell everybody a little bit about yourselves, how you got into racquetball, and what you're doing now.
Fred, you go. Okay, age before beauty.
Exactly.
Okay. So I grew up in a small town in northern Canada, and that's where I learned to play racquetball. The courts were actually attached to the hockey rink. So I just enjoyed playing an individual sport and allowed me opportunities to travel. Made a Canadian national team in my 20s and started playing the pro tour just because I wanted to get better at racquetball, and I loved racquetball. And yeah, it's kind of been a long, fun story since then.
And you, before we get to Fred, what are you doing now? Because I know you're still involved in racquetball.
Yeah, so I retired from playing competitively just this past season. And I was fortunate that Racquetball Canada offered me a position as high performance director. So I get to manage our high performance team, our national team program, which includes basically me being Fred's boss now. But it's been fun to be on this side of the sport, but also interesting because basically since I took over, we haven't been able to compete or travel. So it's been an interesting transition, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. So Fred, what's it like having Jen as a boss?
When I answer her, it's amazing. But no, she's always there for us, and she's been introducing some cool stuff from Racquetball Canada. So it's very fun that she's there now, and I can bother her like every day. So that's cool.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about how you got into the sport as well, and your experiences playing professionally and internationally.
Yeah, I got introduced to the sport when I was like 8 or 9 years old. My parents used to play racquetball, so they introduced me to the sport. I used to play tennis too at the same time when I was younger, and at one point when I was like 14 years old, I had to make a choice between racquetball and tennis, and that's where I chose racquetball. And I knew I wanted to start a career and try to play the tour. And I think I started playing the tour, I don't even remember, maybe 5-7 years ago, that I wanted to play full-time and see where it would lead me. And I decided to do this at the same time as med school. I was a little crazy, but I think it went well.
Now, I'm curious, you have a choice, right? Racquetball or tennis. Why did you choose racquetball?
Because it was quicker. I had traveled a lot with racquetball, and I just liked the sport so much better. Like, it was just more fun, quick, more powerful. So I chose racquetball.
Well, if you're just joining us, we're talking with Jen Saunders, Frederique Lambert, both from Canada, both have represented Canada and have also competed on the LPRT. I'm going to turn it over to TJ in a moment because I know she has a bunch of fun questions for them. But I just want to remind you, coming up, we're going to play Kahoot with these two. So now you get to test your skills, your knowledge skills against these two. Fred, you talked about being a doctor already. So the standard is high, people. Let's see if we can beat Frederique and Jen Saunders in Kahoot. So here's the information you need. It's www.kahoot.it, and the PIN number is 594 594-8600. So if you're new to this, just go to kahoot.it and then enter the pin 594-8600. You'll be asked to enter a spin for a name, and then you'll be in the game for when we start. But I'm going to turn it over to TJ and let you ask your questions.
Thank you, Tim. All right. Whoop. All right. So what we usually do is just I'll ask a series of rapid fire questions. Don't think too much about them. Just answer the first thing that comes to mind. First question, what was the last thing you did before you joined this call?
Poured a glass of wine.
Ate tartare.
What was the last book you read?
I don't read books.
Some kind of medical books.
What was one of your best on-court racquetball moments?
Mine was when I beat Fred.
It was when I lost to Jen. I'm kidding.
I beat Fred for the last time in 2014, and it was a bit of an upset victory, and it was it was a very tight match, and it was a very memorable moment for me. No offense, Fred. She had beaten me a few times before then. So
it's funny because today I was thinking, when was the last time that I lost to you? And I didn't remember, but now you just answered my question. I knew that Jen was going to be all over it. One of my best moments in racquetball was, probably when I beat Paola at the New Jersey Open. I don't remember what year it was.
Yeah,
that was probably my best moment.
Yeah, one of just a handful of people to beat Paola.
Mm-hmm.
What do you miss most about playing the racquetball tour?
Just hanging out with the girls and all the cool cities we got to go to.
Traveling and winning.
I can't say winning, so.
Cold hard math. Who was the funniest player on tour?
Me. I mean, I heard it from Carrie and Cheryl, so me. Yeah.
That's a good question. Sorry.
Fred.
Sorry. That's
classic Frederique.
Well, I have to say Jen. I mean, I didn't play the tour with her, but I traveled all around the world with her, so it was Jen.
Okay. Who was the most dramatic player on tour when you played?
Can I say me?
Jen. You absolutely can.
And I'll say me.
Maria Vargas used to get pretty intense and lots of yelling and throwing herself around, but Cheryl Godinez was always good for winning a rally and then being so upset at herself. So those are a couple of good examples.
That's a good one. Who argued with the ref most on tour?
Rhonda.
Oh. Rhonda. I don't know. When Paola doesn't get her way, she gets pretty upset, but there's a lot less arguing on the women's tour, I find, than the men's.
I would agree with that. What is one thing that people would be surprised to know about you while you played the racquetball tour?
That as a junior, I was terrible and couldn't beat anybody. That might not be that surprising, but.
I didn't know that.
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't like training.
Okay, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. Did you have a favorite event?
Yeah, I like going to the Washington, D.C. area because of TJ and Ira, but it was just a great community there, especially the lady racquetball players out of there were awesome. Karen and Kristen and Candy, and hope they're listening. So it was just always fun to go to that area.
I would probably have to say Maryland and New Jersey. because I always played good there, and it was very fun.
All right, last question. If you had one wish for the sport of racquetball, what would it be?
Influx of junior players.
Yeah, growing, make it televised.
Great answers. Thank you both for answering all those questions. That was fun. Tim, I'm going to turn it back to you.
I was just kidding. Welcome back, everybody. If you have a question for Jen or Frederique, now's your chance. Put it in your chat box, and we'll make sure we get it to them. You can ask questions about their racquetball careers. You can ask them about other things. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. So one of the things that I'm curious about is the differences in your experiences between competing internationally and then competing on the professional tour. What are some of the pros and cons, or the things that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy competing in those two different environments?
So for me, when I played the two different they're not both called tours, but they were different scoring formats. So the pro tour was best of 5 and international was best of 3. And I always felt that in best of 3, there's more probability or upsets were more possible. So I think I thrived as often being the underdog in that scenario. I also obviously am a proud Canadian, so loved playing for Team Canada and loved the support that Racquetball Canada gave us on each of those trips. I also enjoyed the Pro Tour a lot, though, because it was like playing intense matches like at least once a month. And it really taught me how to be a better racquetball player because there weren't coaches and support staff all around you. You really had to fend for yourself. So I think it really made me a better player.
Yeah, I think one of the big difference between the Pro Tour and the international tournaments for me was that at international tournaments, like I had time to come in before, settle down a little bit, just take the pressure from school off my shoulders. But when I came to tour, I always had to study. I always had exams. I would come in like late at night or whatever. So it was very stressful for me to play the tour full time while doing the my school. And I think it was also a lot different because when we played for Canada, we had Canada on our back, so we were representing our country, not only our own self. So it was different for that. And I really like the international tournaments because we would have physiotherapists that would massage my shoulder after each match. And on the LPRT, well, I had to do it by myself. So it was not the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do have a question from Sean Walter. He says, how does the popularity of racquetball in Canada compare with its popularity in the US?
I think we're pretty the same, actually. Like there's some great centers that are very popular for racquetball, but I think that as a sport, we know we're struggling in Canada and the United States, especially compared to places like Mexico and Bolivia.
I think we have less center than in the United States, but the one that we have some very like players that I've been playing forever and that love the sports and come like 3 or 4 times every day. So we have like people that love racquetball in Canada. It's just we have less centers, but the ones that are there have been there forever.
One of the questions I have is that you know, Jen, you're still involved in the sport. You stayed in the sport and you're going to continue staying in the sport. And Fred, you're now working full time and are a doctor. One of the challenges is a lot of players will play the professional tour, maybe play internationally, retire, and then kind of disappear from the sport. How do you make sure that doesn't happen so that those quote unquote heroes in the sport in your country can be an inspiration to those juniors coming through and maybe get that junior programming?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because a lot of our athletes don't have end retirement dates. They might play casually or play some pro tour stops. So it's hard to really honor them as they're leaving the sport. So sometimes they kind of disappear and we don't know. So that's like just difficult in general. I don't want to always say the answer is money, but there's not a lot of money in coaching. So once we're done playing the pro tour and barely scraping by, need to go make a living, right? And I'm fortunate enough to be able to work in the sport and get government funding so that I can pay my bills. But you can't expect, players that have been barely scraping by through the pro tour and playing the sport to stay on when there isn't enough money in coaching or various administration spots. Like, look at all the work TJ does, and it's not for financial gain.
Yeah, it's tough, like, to stay involved after kind of retiring, but I think my goal is to continue playing a little bit as far as I can and continue like to play with the juniors here. Of course, I don't have a lot of times, but I think that when I finally graduate from residency, I'll try to at least like get a couple times a month on the court and just keep playing.
I know that one of the goals that we have with Racquetball Canada is to bring in our players kind of as mentors. That's something I'm looking to do so that they don't have to be involved full time on a weekly basis, but maybe bring them into a training camp or some sessions so that we can learn from them for sure.
And how do you? I'm going to come to TJ in a minute because I know she has a question, but how do you in Racquetball Canada compete internationally against just the number of participants that are coming out of Central and South America? It's so competitive and they bring so many talented athletes and you just don't have the numbers. So how do you make sure that when you get those as a high performance director, Jen, how do you make sure that they go at their very best? And even if you don't have 50 behind them, the one or two that you have are top quality.
Quality over quantity, Tim.
How do you
Great answer.
Quality? Do you have a system in place that supports the development of these athletes to become, super?
Yeah. So we have a national team program. We don't just fund our top level athletes. We have an elite team, a development team, and a junior team. We try to support them in various ways. We know that our international results have been declining. We're looking at making some changes to our culture. Basically more skill development and just supporting our athletes as best we can and making them believe in themselves that they are still relevant on the international stage. We're doing that by creating community and supporting them as best we can.
TJ?
Obviously you both played at such a high level, both internationally and on the tour, such as the big stage as the US Open. You talk a little bit about how important the psychology of the game is and how you deal with that both as an individual player and when you're playing for Team Canada.
Fred's psychological game may be a little lacking.
Have you ever seen Fred play, TJ?
That's what I was gonna say. I think I was lacking on the tour and on the international.
Where do I sign up?
I will say though that psychologically speaking, I think Fred's strengths that sometimes become weaknesses are how emotional and passionate she is and how stubborn she is. She can make those work for her a lot. It's just sometimes they get the best of her and she might not know how to bring herself back. But the things that can be her weaknesses are also some of her greatest strengths. So it's just getting Fred to tune into that a little bit, But for me, definitely sports psychology was I felt like it was one of my secret weapons because I tried never to get flustered or never show any that I was getting upset. And I always tried to be the smartest player on the court because I wasn't necessarily the most skilled player on the court.
I have to say in my defense that what you guys saw on tour was 1,000 times better than what I was when I was younger. I had a lot of work with sports psychologists when I was younger that got me to this point, which was not perfect, but it was still a lot better than it was. But I think that's what makes me too, right? Because I think if I wouldn't have had that emotion, I would probably not have been where I am today. And if I didn't have that emotion, maybe I would have been number one, but well, we never know about that.
That's really good information for junior players out there who are watching and maybe struggling with the same thing, that they can overcome it or they can find a way to to utilize it as best they can. What other advice would you give to junior players who are coming up and have thoughts of maybe playing for their country or playing on tour?
Well, TJ, I think along those lines is that I wouldn't try to change Fred, right? I would try to help her be her best self, but you shouldn't change yourself because you think you shouldn't be emotional or you should be more emotional. Like, you need to be yourself but try to figure out what the best version of yourself is and bring that to the court every day. So that's kind of along the sports psychology lines that I try to talk to the athletes about.
It's great advice.
Yeah, I think juniors just have to find themselves and have to keep working on how they are. Like, how they got there is, if they already, no, hold on, I'm gonna rewind that. I don't even know what I was gonna say, but just like for juniors that are struggling with some emotional problem, I think that you cannot take out these emotions entirely. You just have to try to control them, which is something very tough to do. But with good sports psychologists like Tim, you could overcome them.
I gotta tell a little story, TJ, about Jen, because there was I do remember this one time she was playing and maybe not having a great day. And so she took a timeout and stayed on the court. And of course, who's looking on side but Michel Gagnon, just like, sitting there. And after the match, it's like, Jen, why didn't you take a timeout and come talk to your coach? I didn't want to talk to him. I knew what he'd say anyway.
Sometimes you just need a breather.
Yeah.
Sometimes on international events, the courts are air conditioned and outside the courts is not air conditioned. So for this Canadian girl, I need some AC in my life.
Well, we got a couple of other questions for you. Cheryl Adlard says, how important was coaching to your development?
Adlard. For me, it was crazy important because I grew up in a small town and just was I had a coach there that put in a lot of time and energy. But, once I moved south to the big city of Winnipeg, just being exposed to more racquetball and having coaches that had been on international trips and had a lot of experience help me out and teach me the game was like crazy important for me.
Yeah, coaching was so important to me because I could not get on the courts as much as the other girls do, so I had to take advantage of whenever I was on the court. And I think that Michelle was always there for me at any time of the day, even if it was at 9 p.m. or 7 a.m. Like, he would come to the court with me, and I think that was a big advantage. So I think if he would not have been there, it would have not been that easy.
Jen, Jay Josie, what legendary Canadian all-time racquetball records do you hold?
Well, thank you, Jay, for chiming in. I really appreciate you watching the program this evening. I do have 11 national singles titles and 13 national doubles titles, which is combined a record for Canada. I do, Jay, this is maybe a little extra info for you, 5 mixed doubles championships. And when I was 19 and not that good yet, I also won women's A. So you just keep adding them up. And I'm probably not done yet because I'll probably win like 45 plus or something sometime soon.
So I guess to keep things parity. Do you know what your head-to-head record is against Fred?
Oh, probably.
No, I don't. It used to be really good, but it's probably not so much anymore since I haven't beat her since 2014.
Next question is from Gary Somers. Do you get extra motivation to win when playing opponents from other countries?
100%. Yeah. Like, not necessarily on the pro tour, but once you put on a Team Canada shirt, then for sure.
Yeah, especially if they're one of the top other countries' players. That's even more fun.
Yeah.
Sean Walter again. Was there any one particular shot that you really struggled with in the beginning but got better as your career progressed? and what did you do to improve that skill?
Yeah, my forehand was terrible. I really struggled hitting forehands. I could hit a backhand for some reason, but not a forehand. And actually, I started working with Cliff Swain, and he changed my grip. And it was kind of later in my career, and it was very difficult to make that change. But it probably extended my career by 5+ years. So just continuing to work and improve and being open to change was important.
Particular shot that you really struggle with? Well, ceiling balls. Ceiling balls are never my strength, but I think they're still.
You hit any ceiling balls, Fred?
Yeah, but they still are not, and I'm trying to practice them, but I still don't like hitting them. And pinches was a shot that I really struggle with. I cannot hit a powerful pinch, but I learned how to do like the touchy pinches, and I think that's how yeah, exactly. That one always works, but that one, not at all. So I think you have to work with your strength too, and get away around the shot that you don't like to. But ceilings, I'm still struggling a bit.
Well, just a reminder, if you're just joining us or you haven't yet, go on to kahoot.it and enter the PIN code 5948600 to participate in a trivia quiz against Jen and Frederique and test yourself on your knowledge against theirs. One of the questions I have for you is just, you've played a lot throughout the years, and you know, Jen, you talked about you went through an awful lot of success and then went through some more challenging experiences later on, especially internationally. How did you deal with that frustration, knowing that you're not as good as maybe you could or should be if you had the time for training and able to give it 100%? And the same thing for Fred. I know we've talked about it before, where you're in your medical school and you're still playing the Pro Tour. If you weren't in medical school, you would be so much better. How do you cope with that frustration, knowing that you could be better if the situation was different?
Well, I think my coping with this was quitting the tour. I did not wait for so long. I had like a bad 6 months, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. And my defense school was getting even more and more demanding, so that's why I had to leave a little bit. But I just didn't like the way I was playing. I didn't feel good on the court anymore. So that's why I kind of retired myself a little bit earlier than I would have wanted to. But I think it was the best decision, because I was getting mentally tired from school, and then racquetball tournaments would not give me the excitement anymore that I would have had before. And it was just like adding to my mental tiredness, because I was just losing to players that I would normally not struggle again. So that's why I think I kind of took a little break from racquetball. But who knows, maybe at one point I'm going to come back. But if I come back, I'll do it good. Like, I'll start training and I'll come back when I think my game is going to be good enough.
Yeah, for me, I chose to stop playing the tour because I wasn't enjoying the travel as much. I was just getting tired of being in airports and traveling so often. So internationally, that certainly affected my results. But what I had to do was just accept the player that I was bringing at that point, at that time, and work as hard as I could to prepare, but know that I had to accept who I was. I will say that the sport of racquetball in general, especially on the women's side, has gotten so much better that I think it maybe had a little less to do with how good I was and a little more to do with how good everybody else was getting.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Racquetball Canada has a question and said, what's the one match you'd love to replay? Either the one that was a positive outcome or the one that got away?
Fred has a good one.
Veracruz, 2000, I don't remember what, when I was up 2-1 against Paola, 9-7. I killed the ball to get my 10 point, and somebody called it a replay, and I wanted to just kill them. But that would be the match that I would like to replay, of course. And Paola's brother was the line judge, and he agreed with the call. So I was like, this is ridiculous. Yeah.
Mine was actually against Paola too. She was a little bit younger at the time, but I'm pretty sure she was number one. And we were in a tiebreaker, and it was 10-10. And she was up at the front court, scraped up one of my little backhand pinches. And all I had to do was take my forehand and hit the front wall, and I would have won. It was a Pan American Championships in Costa Rica, and it hit the crack between the front wall and the floor and popped up. And it skipped, and I could have hit it 4 feet high. But I will say that was my bad forehand grip before Cliff fixed it. So if I would have had that forehand change, I would have won for sure.
Michelle Dorsey says, do you have any fun favorite shots that you like to pull out as a surprise when you're feeling confident or playful?
They're not a surprise when Fred hits them, because she hits them all the time.
All of them? Overhead pinch. That's the only pinch I know how to hit. Probably the overhead cross court pinch, or the backhand, whatever, overhead on the left corner. Those are all the shots that I love how to hit, or the one from the front wall, instead of hitting them very hard, just like
Your little droppy shots.
yeah, the droppy shot. But I think that's not a surprise anymore, because everybody knew that. I think what would be a surprise if I did a ceiling ball.
Yeah. People would be running forward, and you could hit a ceiling ball over their head.
What was it like playing doubles together? Because you guys are quite characters and very different styles.
Yeah. I kind of wish that we could have played doubles together just a few years earlier in my career, when I felt a lot more confident on the left side. And with Fred's forehand, I think we could have been really good, but we ended up trying that just a little, maybe a year or two later than would have been perfect. But it was super fun playing with Fred, because, well, I mean, she does get upset with results and stuff. Like, it's not like she doesn't care, but she's not super stressed. So we're really good roomies. So that was probably even better.
Yeah, I love playing with Jen, because I felt comfortable enough to try all my crazy shots, and I know that she would never get mad at me, because she knows that most of the time I could probably make them, but sometimes like I miss them, but that's part of the game, right? But I felt confident enough to just be myself on the doubles court with her, and not try to be someone else, because that's the way I'm supposed to play, or that's the way the book says I'm supposed to play. So I love playing with Jen for that. She will never get mad at me.
Okay, so let's turn our attention away from the questions, and we're going to focus a little bit on some trivia questions. So if you haven't yet, make sure you go to kahoot.it, enter the pin 5948600, and we should be ready to play. And I know Jen and Fred are there. Let's take a look. I think we're ready.
Okay, so I got my strategy from last time I watched this.
Okay, so there's an opportunity there, because
Are we playing together?
No, you got to answer on your own.
First question is, where is Canada located?
Oh, well, I hope we know that one.
Pure genius.
We should also remind you that the faster you answer, the more points you get.
Oh, shoot, I cannot talk. Okay, I'll focus.
Focus.
You haven't answered yet, Fred? Oh, my goodness. Rookie mistake.
Wait, why is that going so not quickly?
Did you pay your internet bill?
I did.
Okay, everybody got it right. 8-0 above the United States. Smart Owl takes an early lead.
Shit.
What are the
come on,
venues in Canada?
Easy.
These are some easy ones. Jay is our trivia machine, and I think he set us up for some easy ones just to relax everybody into this.
I think we should point out that Fred's doing this interview in her second language. It's pretty impressive.
That's why it takes me a while to answer those trivia questions.
Oh, yeah. Now there's
It isn't
excuses.
one of these options either, so it's impressive. Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure everybody knew.
So, two people put American and Canadian. Wow. Okay.
Biting my tongue.
Green Chicken advances to second place. Question 3. What is the biggest city in Canada?
Easy peasy.
Quebec, Vancouver, Toronto, or Alaska?
Alaska's my favorite city in Canada.
It's big.
it's big. Might not be a city. Spoiler alert.
I hope I got that one right. I wasn't sure.
Oh, there's even a picture of it right there.
And Toronto is the right answer. Quebec is not the biggest city. Let's take a look at our leaderboard. Not too much change. Dr. Raccoon coming into 4th. Which statement is correct? Canada is the biggest country in the world, the second biggest in the world, the third biggest country in the world. None of the previous answers.
You know this, Fred?
TJ, what are you looking at?
Oh, I need to move this bigger because it's
You didn't have her glasses.
print is very small.
Get your glasses out, TJ.
I had the questions. Let me make this bigger. Okay, now I can see. I don't have
The
to.
answer is Canada is the second biggest country in the world.
What's the biggest country in the world, Tim?
Russia.
You guys are so smart.
Shit, I'm still second. Sorry for my language.
Fred's 4.
That's all right, Fred.
Technical.
What is Canada's national animal?
Oh no. Let me.
Bear, moose, beaver, fox.
I think I got it wrong.
I think I got it wrong too.
I probably got it wrong 3.
Oh.
Well, all you Racquetball Canada fans, all of you watching in Canada should be getting these right. So,
Oh dear. What's the answer?
no, it's not a
The patient's killing me.
And the answer is beaver.
Oh, I got that wrong.
Saunders and Lambert got it right. And there's a turn. A green chicken takes the lead. Question 6. What is the only official bilingual province, both English and French?
That's
I was lightning fast on that one.
I know this one because I live there.
Oh, you know what?
Did you get it wrong?
Oh, I might have gotten it wrong too.
I might have got it wrong.
Oh,
What do you think, Fred? Oh dear.
I think I might have it wrong.
Fred, why don't you say something in French for our French listeners?
it is New Brunswick.
Ah, it's New Brunswick.
It pays to live there.
We don't have the 2 official languages.
Studied Canada. If I knew this.
Raccoon is in the lead now.
Why did you pass me if you got it right? If you got it wrong too?
I got it
I
right.
didn't pass you. Someone else did.
What is the only official unilingual province? French only.
You're unilingual, Fred, you snobs.
Quebec, New Brunswick,
Bilingual.
or Vancouver.
Oh.
How you doing, TJ?
TJ, are you in last place on this quiz?
Oh, I wasn't. Second for the first 2 or 3 questions. I was in second.
Quebec is the right answer. One person chose Ontario. Dr. Raccoon still in the lead. Which celebrity is not
I'm great at
Canadian
this.
here?
Oh.
Also, Alex Trebek is Canadian.
I did know that.
Who else?
Justin Bieber, Drake, Seth Rogen, George Clooney.
I'm not sure.
Celine Dion, Avril Lavigne.
And the guy that's married to Blake Lively.
Shania Twain.
Oh, Shania Twain. Oh, yeah, Ryan Reynolds.
Yes. Right?
Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
And the answer, George Clooney. Everybody got it right.
Too easy.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
It's close. Question 9. Which statement is true?
Who wrote these?
Oh.
Oh my God. Is that a joke?
Oh, good
Good
How
question.
much bigger is Canada to the UK? 41 times, 30 times, 17 times, 22 times.
Whew, all right.
Anyone want to roll some dice and take a guess?
Can we get a fact check on this question?
Yes. 41 times the size of the UK.
50-50 chance. Narrowed it down.
Great guess.
Owl claims the lead with one question to go. Last question. Where is Niagara Falls?
In Canada.
Oh,
USA, Canada, both USA and Canada, Africa.
The Niagara Falls in Africa are beautiful, I hear.
Yes, they start with a V though.
I got that too. Well-known fact, the Canadian Niagara Falls, spoiler alert, are nicer than the USA Niagara Falls.
Answer is both USA and Canada.
I
So
have
let's take a look. Third place, Dr. Raccoon. Second place, Caring Rhino. First
Silver
place,
medal.
Smart Owl.
Tim, did you win again?
Yeah.
That's because he knew the New Brunswick answer. Lame sauce.
and in the course of time, UK was bigger than you.
How would I know that? How would I know
He's
that?
also from England. He's from everywhere. This is not fair.
So,
Canadian.
well done, everybody, and thanks for participating in that. Hope you enjoyed it. TJ, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think you have a kind of a question for the two of them.
Well, I'm going to ask Jay first to put up our, yay, story time with Jen and Fred.
Are we supposed to get everybody ready for bed or what?
Yeah, at least on the East Coast. So I'm going to ask both of you just to tell a good story, a good memory, something funny about your time on the women's professional racquetball tour.
We had a tournament in Sacramento. I don't remember when. And no, Stockton. And I had left my passport in the hotel room, according to me. I think it was my hotel room. When it was time for me to leave to Sacramento, I couldn't find my passport, but still decided to go to Sacramento, got to Sacramento, still didn't have my passport. I was freaking out, asking the hotel, asking everybody, no passport. So I lost my passport and I had an exam the next day at 8 a.m. And my flight was on Sunday, so it was a big mess. I couldn't get on my flight because it was an international flight, and for international flight, even if it was to the US first, you had to have a passport, but I couldn't get it on it because I didn't have my passport. So I had to buy another flight that would get me close to the border. Asked my friend Corey, thank you, Corey, again. I will always remember you for doing this for me. Had to drive to Buffalo to pick me up on the border, and we had to cross the border, and at the border, they almost didn't let me in. But at the end of the day, I got into Canada without a passport. So that was my horrible story. I think it was my most memorable time on tour. I didn't make it to my exam. I had to redo it, and it was not multiple choice. It was like long answers. I was very mad. But I got back to Canada.
We're glad you made it, Fred.
Good. It might have been the French accent.
I have a couple missing passport stories, but those are that's the joys of traveling internationally to when back in my day, most of the stops were in the States. We got to go to some great cities. So I'll tell a nice story. One of my favorite memories was going to Seattle. It happened to be my birthday, and my best buddy TJ and I met at the airport fairly early, and we spent the day at Pike Place Market, and we went to the original Starbucks. What was the name of the restaurant we're from, Sleepless in Seattle?
Oh, it was some seafood restaurant. I don't know the name of it.
And we sat in the spots where Tom Hanks and Rob Reiner had sat. And best part was TJ bought me lunch. So that was pretty great birthday. But we partied. Well, We usually try to do it after the tournament. Every now and then we slipped up, but we because of the Stockton tournaments, we got to go to Napa Valley a couple times, so I enjoyed that a lot. And we also played the stop in New Orleans, so got to spend some time on Bourbon Street. And Memphis had, what was the name of the street in Memphis? Because that was a great spot too.
Beale Street.
Not that I was all about the partying or anything, but those were some fun times.
Just a perk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it the Athenian Inn? Is that the right restaurant?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I'd have to Google it.
I just Googled it. It said the Athenian Inn. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah, it's good. Good seafood.
Well, we're going to be respectful of your time and wrap up here in a few minutes. But one of the questions we kind of want to close out is looking at racquetball in today's society, and the fact that, you know, we've seen it fluctuate over the last 20 years in popularity, and you know, how big the tournaments are or not. National championships in Canada, national championships in the US, international competition as well. You know, from your perspectives, how, looking at the LPRT in particular, how does the LPRT continue to grow, and what should the LPRT be doing to make sure that the tour stays strong and continues to get better?
Fred?
Jen?
Got anything? Well, I think that some of the initiatives the LPRT has done, they need to build on them. So obviously, having junior clinics at each event or supporting the junior programs at the facilities they go to. I know it's a little bit harder to get into schools, but if you have an in the various cities, if you can go to an assembly or those types of things, that'd be really great. But I really think the LPRT needs to continue leveraging their international profile, having tournaments outside the United States, where a lot of the talent is now coming from. I know it doesn't even matter, right? Because there's only a few players from the United States now. So just leveraging the countries where it's super popular and working where your strengths are.
Yeah, I think what they have to keep doing is support the international players, because I think those are the ones that are making the tour right now. There are a lot more international players than US players, and it's not always easy for them to travel to the United States, pay for the hotel, and sometimes they have to come back like 2 times a month, depending on the schedule. So I think their main focus should be on the international player. It was easier for us Canadians, but like Bolivians and stuff like this, it's not easy, and it's not everybody that has support from their country. So I think that's what the main focus should be at. But you're doing an amazing job.
And do you see, you know, prospects in Canada joining the LPRT at some point? You know, you two aren't playing on the tour anymore, and so we don't really have the Canadian representation. Is that something we will be seeing soon?
I think, speaking from administration point of view, we're going to try to find some ways to support our athletes to get down to some pro tour stops, because we think it's important for their development. And as far as international results go, we want them to be more match ready. As far as playing the pro tour full time, I think it's just a really tough thing to do when you want to be a student and you want to work on a career as well. So it's a hard thing to choose, unfortunately, but we certainly want to support our Canadian players to get down into some of the stops for sure.
TJ, any final comments or questions?
Just appreciate both of you taking the time to do this. I do miss both of you, as a player, and just hanging out with both of you. Great personalities, great people. And Fred, I do completely understand all the challenges you went through. We could see it, knowing what a talented player you were, but struggling so much to have that balance between school, which was so important, and now you're a doctor. But it also makes your entire experience so interesting to some of those, again, people out there, the fans who were watching and cheering you on, and junior players coming up. Jen, we've been friends for a while. I appreciate our friendship. I think you would make an amazing coach of any player if that comes along for you in Canada. I hope it does. So again, thank you both so much.
If I ever
Thank
come back, I'll bring Jen as a coach to every tournament. How about
You
that?
can't afford me. You can't afford me, Fred.
Racquetball Canada will pay for it.
We'll work on this. Things are in motion.
Thank you so much, TJ, and for all the young players out there. I think that I made it possible for young players to do two things at the same time. So I think if they follow their dreams and they like what they're doing, like it can be possible. It's not easy, but thank to you guys, the LPRT, for supporting me for 5 years while I was doing those two things full times. And just kids, keep believing in yourself and do it if you want to do it.
Great. Jen, do you have any advice?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be fun, right? But I think the one thing we haven't talked about is that we need to get out on the other side of this unprecedented time in sport. So I hope everybody's staying safe and returning to the courts safely. And I look forward to the time when we can all meet in person and compete and enjoy our amazing racquetball community.
Well said.
Well,
That's all we have for this evening. Thank you so much for those of you who's joined us. And of course, we'll be back next week with more. But on behalf of myself, Tim Baggers, TJ Bamba, Jen Saunders, and Frederique Lambert, thank you so much for watching.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.